Welcome back to the Bitcoin Briefing. This is episode 13, and let's start off with some price action. Bitcoin isn't, well, the same as last week really, is not doing too well. We've been on a huge downward trend for weeks now, and we've just, as I was recording this, we've just fallen below 34,000, and we're now trading at 33,500. Which is amazing, really. If I had some more money and if I've managed to stay more liquid, I would definitely be buying. But then, last week at 40 odd, I also said I'd be buying. So definitely don't take trading or purchasing advice from me. Now, the losses are not just confined to Bitcoin and the wider crypto market. The stock market isn't doing too well either. But some of the companies that have done worse are those with the biggest exposure to cryptocurrencies. So, companies like Coinbase and MicroStrategy. Coinbase is down 13% today, trading now at 191, which is down a lot from its initial price last year of $342. MicroStrategy is doing even worse. It's down 17.84, basically 18% in 24 hours. And that's trading at 375. Now, I will add that 375 is significantly higher than the company's share price before it started to get into Bitcoin and move much of its treasury reserves into BTC. Looking at the wider crypto market, yeah, it's been a bit of a bloodbath. We've got Ethereum, Binance, Cardano, all around 30% down over the last 7 days. Solana, which I believe is having some network problems, they're down 40%. So yeah, painful. And it's going to be painful really for anybody that's got into Bitcoin over the last 6 months, I guess. But it's a good lesson to have really. It builds character, holding a bag up into profit and then back down into a loss. Being a long-term holder myself, I've had to do that many times. And as I said last week, really you just have to hold the bag long enough until these swings become irrelevant to your profit position. Next up, we have some of the biggest news from last week, which is that Russia has, or its central bank at least, has put forward a proposal to ban mining in its country. And the reason it's given for that is financial stability, citizens' well-being, and monetary policy sovereignty. Now, I'm sure citizens' well-being is not as important as their financial stability or the sovereignty of their monetary policy, but it's nice that they included and, are thinking about the Russian people who thought that they wanted to have exposure to crypto, but are clearly wrong. Now, Russia is a major player in or at least was, or for the meantime is, a major player in the global mining game. They have the third highest hash power of any country after Kazakhstan, who's second, and then at the top is the United States. Now, this used to be China. They had 70% of the global hash power. However, just like Russia, and probably for very similar reasons, they've decided to prohibit their citizens from, or their subjects, I should say, engaging in Bitcoin mining. Now, on the face of it, Russia turning off their graphic processors and Kazakhstan, who's having a terrible amount of internal instability at the moment, would seem like terrible news for Bitcoin. But I think it's not really that much of a big issue. We have already gone through this with China. When China in May of last year decided that they were going to stop mining, the hash power dropped from 180 exahashes to 60, which was a 60% drop, which is about right, given that they were 70% of the hash power anyway. And it's taken us 6 months to basically get back. And it is no different now on the network than it would have been had China not done anything. Except, of course, it's significantly more decentralized. And, of course, we have one more piece of FUD, which has been proven to come to nothing. The mining centralization in China FUD, specifically. For me, it's no surprise that Russia are doing this and China are doing this, because Bitcoin is anathema to these kind of regimes. Bitcoin is a freedom catalyst, and it gives to everybody who holds it an appreciation of personal sovereignty and decentralization. And that's the kind of thing that these particular regimes are just not going to tolerate. And it is a shame in a way, strategically for them, because Bitcoin would definitely help in their wider aims to destabilize the United States and the dollar as the world reserve currency. But I think that doesn't quite stack up to the terrible prospect for them of having a free, decentralized, hard money circulating in their borders and competing with their surveillance CBDC currency. So yeah, it's a shame, but it's unsurprising. And actually, I wonder if you could create some kind of index where you're judging the freeness of a country against its disposition to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. All right, so next up we have Rio de Janeiro is investing 1% of its city funds into Bitcoin, and its mayor, Edward Beas, I hope I pronounced that right, my Spanish isn't great, Edward Beas has announced this during Rio's Innovation Week, and he wants to turn the city into a crypto hub, very similar to Miami or in El Salvador, the Bitcoin city. He's said that he's going to accelerate and incentivize this by allowing citizens to pay their taxes in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and getting a 10% discount, which is great. One of the hardest challenges for any of these civic institutions to make the move into Bitcoin is really being the first mover. I mean, you have to be pretty risk tolerant and innovative to risk your career by putting city funds into what many people would concern some kind of casino Ponzi scheme, or some of the kind of FUD or notions that are in the minds of older people who haven't had time to study Bitcoin. This is the kind of thing that it's hugely risky. But the good thing is that now with cities like this, now they have acted as the kind of vanguard, putting sacred public funds into Bitcoin. It's so much easier now for the rest of cities, particularly those in situations where it's highly desirable or even they're desperate, to start making the move into crypto. And finally, we have the World Economic Forum, which kicked off last week online rather than in the Alpine Swiss town of Davos, of which it's named after. Now, the WEF is run by this man, Mr. Klaus Schwab. He looks a bit like a James Bond villain, and he has taken it upon himself to unite all of the politicians and billionaires and thought leaders and movie stars to this little village with an aim to solve all of the world's problems. Problems, I would say, that many of these people's companies and the politicians' policies are directly responsible to. This is basically a highly globalist organization. They believe that global problems require global solutions, and they are the people to provide those solutions. They are behind the narrative of the Great Reset, Build Back Better, stakeholder capitalism, which for those of you that haven't heard of it, it is a refashioning of the kind of ideas that underpin Western capitalism, which is that corporations are working for their owners, the shareholders. This would adjust that to forcing corporations to work for its wider stakeholders, not shareholders. Stakeholders being the community, employees, people who work, people who own it, basically everybody around that business. And this sounds really nice until you realize that the reality of that would be that the government starts taking board seats and equity in companies over a certain employee threshold. So yeah, it is a kind of techno-socialism that the WEF is pushing. And one of their pet hates is, of course, Bitcoin. Now, the WEF is obsessed with climate change, and it's probably one of their biggest tools in their bag to achieve their globalist aims through ESG and other mechanisms, they're using climate change to suck up power from the nation states and centralize it in a global body with an aim to fix climate change. Now, the WEF has become quite a bit more famous during the pandemic because conspiracy theories about the WEF and Davos abound, and some have more merit than others, but you can get a good idea about what this organization wants just from looking at the stuff they publish themselves. There was a very famous article with the title, "It's 2030, I own nothing, I have no privacy, and I've never been happier." It says a lot about the kind of future they're trying to bring in. But anyway, back to Bitcoin. The WEF hate Bitcoin and are always attacking on it for its environmental credentials. I don't think they really care about that. What they do care, for the same reason that Bitcoin's anathema to the regimes in Russia and China, everything the WEF does is all about centralization, and all Bitcoin can do is promote decentralization. It's like oil and water, they're just not going to mix. And of course, just like with China, the WEF pushing forward their central bank digital currencies, so they're not going to want a free, hard, decentralized money undermining that. Now, as I say, the WEF attack Bitcoin every year, and this year is no different. In this year's report, they found a professor, a Mr. Pete Howson, senior lecturer in international development at Northumbria University, not one of Britain's top institutions, I might add, has said in 2022, it is likely to see stronger public opposition to Bitcoin on environmental grounds, which could force regulators to act more decisively. And they've pulled up a YouGov poll. Now, YouGov have lost a lot of credibility for me during the health crisis we've had over the last 2 years. They published a lot of very suspect poll data that would suggest there's a huge amount of public support for even more strict lockdown measures. And, you try and find people that would be in favor of closing nightclubs forever, as an example, and you just can't find them. So I think this is another case of that, which is saying for the over 35s, between 40 and 60% of people would be in favor of an outright ban of cryptocurrencies on environmental grounds. Now, I don't buy this for a second, but what is important is that this kind of data, this kind of polling is used to justify future policy. Now, the British might not be what they were, but they're certainly not this authoritarian. There's no way 40 or 50% of people would just ban cryptocurrencies because it's bad for the environment. So yeah, I don't think that this data is true, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Now, Lynn Alden, one of my favorite analysts, has posted a tweet on this very subject, on this very report, in fact, and a report from 2017 that ended up not being true. Fact check. Bitcoin consumes a small fraction of 1% of global power today, compared to the WEF's 2017 statement that it would consume all of it by now. A lot of these estimates and articles come from people who don't understand how Bitcoin works. And I think that's correct. A lot of people don't understand how Bitcoin works. They certainly don't understand how the mining works. They don't understand the possibilities for Bitcoin to incentivize cheap power productions in places that are, abundant with energy, but have sparse people to send their energy to, like Northern Canada, Alberta, Inner Mongolia, for instance. But they're not going to get this information because the people that control the news and the information that they get are opposed to Bitcoin because it undermines their plans. So yeah, the environmental FUD is an attack on the network, and it's up to us, the community, to defend the network by educating people. Well, thanks for joining me on the Bitcoin Briefing. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you in the next one.
What the hell I'm trying to say? Cellophane will light the way. No more stupid alibi.